interactive, and you guys will feel like interacting and talking at some point when you get comfortable and warm up. And then also, but that by the end you leave feeling empowered to take a general meeting. So we're gonna get started.
Oh
All
shit.
right. You like the graphics? I hope that was a good oh crap. Let's see. Okay, so what I want to start off with is that I want to find out more about you guys. So you're writers, so you're going to what? Write, right? So I really want to know why you write, and what types of stories do you like to write, um, and what TV you could see yourself writing on today. So a three-parter. Why do you write? What types of stories do you like to write? And what TV you can see yourself writing on today. So just give yourself 5 minutes and write on. 5 minutes, guys. Okay, just making sure we're sharing. Okay, guys. I'm curious to hear some responses. Now, because I won't ask you to do something I wouldn't do, I'll um, go first.
This is my fault.
I'm sorry, one
He
second.
took my sister as payback for what I have been doing for the last 9.
Ironically, that would be one of the shows that I would write on, which would be found. So why do I write? So to answer the question, I started writing because I grew up in a very strict Caribbean household where you were seen and not heard, and writing became my way to have a voice. And it's how I speak most authentically, even to this day. So that's why I continue to write. And plus, I have this vision of kind of dispelling the monolithic perception of what the Black experience is in the US and showing it from a different lens. So that's why I write. What types of stories do I like to write? Well, thriller is my jam. I love thriller because I love studying the psychology and why people do the things that they do, and also just like what challenging what is normality. But through that lens, I'll discuss various things like, what does it mean to grow up in a strict Caribbean household? I may tackle mental illness within the Black community. I may tackle addiction. So I'll do a lot of different things. But my first creative credit was actually for a drama. So it had nothing to do with thriller that I was hired to write for Tubi called Dress for Success, which still was true to my voice, was about a Caribbean American protagonist who was assisting immigrants find a job. So I still will root for the underdog in my stories. And then what TV could I see myself writing on today? Well, Found, The Boys, especially The Boys, because The Boys, some of the stuff they come up with, I just know that writer's room has to be fun and wild, and you don't throw any idea at the wall and see what sticks. So those are the type of shows that I like to. And the first season, before they ended up going crazy, haywiring onto France. So would anybody like to share why they write, what types of stories they write, and what TV they could write on today? Anyone? Just put your hand up. Virtual hand, don't be shy. Nobody wants to go? Oh, Meredith, come on, Meredith, turn on your camera and share.
Yeah, I can answer that. All 3 questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like telling stories is just like always come naturally, and like writing is the way to reach a wider audience. I feel like my family was like verbal storytelling was like the way to connect. And being able to get like airtime was meant you had to like have a point, get your story sharp. It felt like I was like training for this from like family gatherings from the very beginning. Types of stories are love stories always, but I always want to talk about like the in-between bits rather than the happily ever afters. Or if it is a happily ever after, then like interrogating that idea, like what does ever after actually mean? And is that true to life? Is that like realistic? Is that what our like connections as humans really look like and feel like? And then for TV, I feel like Modern Love on HBO would be like the perfect fit for me. But also features. I love like the sort of time limits of like what a feature can be, trying to get a whole idea across in only 90 minutes without time to develop later on.
What would be, if you had a feature that you wish you had written, what would it be?
Like Crazy wasn't actually like written, but like structurally it was, because it's a script that didn't have any dialogue to it, but that would be like my number one. Anything by Joe Swanberg, the whole show Easy, all of that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Meredith. Okay, and then Neza, please tell me if I pronounced your name wrong, incorrectly. Come on.
No, that's correct. Let me see if I can get my camera on.
Oh,
Hi. Yeah, Neza, that's correct.
Nessa, tell me
I
what your name means.
it's well, that's a shortening for Chineza. It's kind of a Nigerian name that I think it means God protects, if that's what you just asked.
I know that's right. Blessings upon blessings upon blessings. Yes, Neza. So go ahead, Neza. Why do you write?
I've always thought of myself as an ideas person. So for me, writing is very much a creative outlet and just helps me go throughout the world. I see stories kind of in everything in the little slice of life things that happen, as well as having big concept ideas. So it's just very much a creative exercise more than anything for me.
So,
I would say the type of stories I write are mostly kind of like slice of life rom-com styles. Like, how can we just like analyze the intersection of X versus Y? Like, a lot of my stuff is like the female experience versus like intersectionality or the experience of like Blackness in America. So, like, kind of how those different things can come together, but still be told from, especially in comedy, like from a fun point of view. Or also like a maybe something kind of crazy little weird higher concept drama is kind of what I go for. Um, and I don't do a ton of TV these days, but I would say my latest actual TV project is probably, I've always thought of it as kind of like existing in the Shondaland world because it's like political, but it's still about the human connections as opposed to like this concept of politics. It's more like how do politics affect people and the human connection, and how can it also kind of be big and sexy? So I would say maybe For the People was kind of something I thought would be fun, but that doesn't exist anymore. So maybe um what's still on? Grey's Anatomy would probably be fun.
okay, very cool. And then, so because you said you're more feature, what feature do you wish you had written?
I think it's called Palm Springs. It's kind of like a comedy with a time warpy kind of thing. So I love that. Again, I love character comedies and really interesting things that have high concepts, but still very much based in like real grounded people just having weird experiences.
Awesome, Neza. Thank you so much for sharing. Rachel, come on up. Thank you,
Can y'all
Rachel.
see me? Sorry, I'm on the subway.
You're fine. That's a very New York thing. So great.
Yeah, I'm coming from work, but yeah, thank you so much for being here. So I wrote a little bit about I mean the reason I write is because I feel like for a long time I had a really hard time kind of expressing my emotions, and like I dealt with a lot of mental health issues like from a very early age, and it was just something that I like never knew how to like about. And I just like grew up in a town. I'm from New York, but not the city. I always joke that like my town felt like it should have been in the south, but it was in the north because it was like one of those towns where it was like nobody talked about anything like things like queerness or like you know like I'm Jewish, like nobody was Jewish there. Like it was just like nobody talked about things. And I felt like the only representations that I would see of like, people with mental illness or queerness or like just like differences. I felt a lot of times it was very, all the characters, like all these stories were presented in the same exact way. It was like over and over again. It was just like what people think these people are going through. And so I wanted to just write more stories that were like, well, first off, comedies. I wanted to write more stories about exploring different facets of identity, specifically with mental health, in a comedic way, because I feel like it's such a dark topic and it's such a heady topic. And I feel like the best and most palatable and the most appealing way to do that is through comedy. Even at, like dark comedies, or even just like comedies that kind of I like dark comedies or also just like I call them like highbrow comedies. Just like so like a show that I really would have loved. I know that it's not on the air anymore, but The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel
Oh,
is
such a good show.
it's a show that I absolutely loved. Because it was so different. It was like taking the female experience in the 1950s and doing something completely different with it, but then also showing how like that like doing something different affected her and her life, and just like I don't know, it was just such a like interesting dynamic of like being funny and also like how humor kind of masks like all of these other issues that we're dealing with. So that was really interesting. That's a another one. I know it's not a big word anymore. But just those kind of shows that are like they're comedies, but they really kind of like talk about these corners of issues that I feel like get overlooked a lot, or that like people are like afraid to talk about, you know, like sex was such a taboo topic for so long. And it's like this was a show that was like very sex positive. And so kind of finding shows that can be a little bit in your face, but in like a way that feels like freeing and um like palatable and just like something you can kind of sit with and be like, I enjoy this, and I also feel
Oh, we're losing you a bit, Rachel, in the
I'm
audio.
sorry.
That's okay. But no, but I heard about the sex positive. But I
Yeah.
get a sense of what your style is. So I get it. Very cool, Rachel. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you all. Thanks so much.
And then Saeed, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Saeed.
Yeah, okay. Hi. So happy to be here. Well, to answer your question, Tiffany, why do you write? I have characters in my head. I have stories, plots that I'm really interested, so I want to make them alive. I feel when I put them in paper, they kind of exist. So this is really exciting for me. What types of stories do you write? So the things I love is drama, fantasy, especially. I'm from Iran. I'm from Middle East. We have lots of folklore stories, mythical creatures, you know. We are rich with stories from the past, so I would love to make them live. And TV, I'm with you with The Boys. I love The Boys. I mean, like,
Yes.
the show is amazing. I love it. I love it so much. And you can see exactly what you said, that the writers' room is filled with people with like these crazy ideas, these crazy plot twists. You know, every time you never get bored. You know, I love Game of Thrones. I love Peaky Blinders. They're some of my favorite TVs. But my own interest and my own passion is to took one of those folklore stories that I raised up when we were kids, and like our grandparents would tell us, and like make them stories, make them TV shows, because they have the potential to become that, because they're filled with stories, plot, you know, fantasy creatures, world buildings. So this is what I love to do. And to everyone, I put a spreadsheet on the chat. Everyone come and join. I would love to get all of us to get connected. The spreadsheet is for everyone, so I encourage everyone to be here. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for speaking up. I know it's not easy speaking in front of a group and sharing with yourself, but these are questions that will come up in a general. So it's good to get an idea of why you do things and start to think about what your brand will be. So let me just tell you
Thank
a
you.
bit. Of course, let me just tell you a bit about Roadmap Writers. So Roadmap Writers, it's been around since 2016. In essence, it's an educational screenwriting service. So we have a whole career writers program where we help people learn to craft their pitches, you know, eventually learn how to polish their scripts. You can book consultations with execs that are active in the industry. And then we go all the way up to top tier, which top tier is where most of our signees come. So far, since 2016, Roadmap has helped over 400 writers become repped or optioned. How I got my writing, my first writing credit was actually through being part of the Roadmap Writers community. Another writer that was in there had a meeting and with Mar Vista, who was looking to build the roster. And because I was part of the community, when I reached out to her, she shared the opportunity. She felt comfortable that my script was vetted, and she passed it on. That's how I got my meeting that led to my first job. So that's the goal, as to educate, as also to help people get repped and become optioned. And as I've told you, I'm the director of competitions there and partnerships. So as I told you, it's a screenwriting and training platform. And we're just looking to really guide people, get really excited. Even today, someone got signed and like the email goes out, this person got signed and what company got signed to. It's really exciting. So let's talk about what a general meeting is. So a general meeting is inherently in its title, right? It's a meeting between a writer and a potential collaborator, usually a development exec or producer, for both parties to get to know each other. It's really, you gotta think about it as you're basically kind of like dating, right? Like going on a mini speed date, because if it works out, you keep spending months with these people. So in general, once you have the general meeting, they have probably read something of yours. So they know you can write, but they want to know, are you, I always say all writers are a little bit crazy, right? Because you have all these characters living in your head, but are you a reasonable amount of crazy, right? It's not a job interview, so don't go into it thinking that, although you should still be professional, but you should lead being a human too. If you like to drink, to drive, let your clothes represent your personality. No one expects you really to come in a three-piece suit unless that's your thing. And a lot of these generals are happening still virtually, although some could be in person. It's not a pitch meeting, though you should be prepared to talk about your portfolio. So when you come into the general meeting, it's not like when the person says, tell me about yourself. It's not, I write, blah, 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 blah. It's really when they say, they really want to know who you are. What's your background? Where'd your family come from? They want to know who you are as a human and how that influences your work. The easiest way to think about it is what I said, it's a first date, right? Like, think about the ease you want to be, on your first date. You're trying to suss each other out. Yeah, they're trying to see if you're hireable, but you're also trying to see if you want to work with these people too, because it's okay to say no, right? It's okay if they want to work with you, you're like, I don't feel comfortable in that meeting. So it's really like a first date. And it's an audition in some ways, but there's no job yet, generally. Although they may be thinking about you for a job, a specific assignment, or if you're doing one where it's like you have your own original content going out, it may be to get more information about your script, your feature, your pilot, something of that nature. Or if you're meeting with an agent or an agent or manager, it might be to see if you guys are a good fit to work together. Okay, so how is the meeting? How do you get a meeting? It is as simple as asking to a degree. So generals are the industry standard to potential collaborators and fans of your work. So there's nothing wrong with asking someone, would you be interested in meeting with me for a general to chat about what we're both working on? So say you're at, and I always recommend going to festivals. Of course, you guys, we're at this festival. Festivals are a great way to meet new people. One, because everybody's already in the collaborative spirit. That's why they went to it, to meet new people. And, so that is the perfect place. Like if you connect with someone and say, hey, do you mind if you're live in the same area, can we meet up for coffee? Or can we do virtual coffee if you live too far away? This is a great opportunity. Another way to set general meetings is that through your representation. So if you already have a manager or an agent, they will set general meetings for you. It could be through a referral with a friend, like I said, with the writer that I knew in the community. She had already had the connection with Mar Vista, so she helped me. She referred me and got me the general meeting. It could be through a cold query. Although, again, if you're going to cold query, make sure that, say you want an agent at CAA, do not cold query every agent at CAA. Be very strategic on researching what I call a little light stalking, researching the person you're reaching out to, making sure that your query letter sticks out with whether it's an accolade that you have or whether it shows that you've done research on the person. Hey, I saw you on Variety that you said this, or I saw this interview with you and you said this, and it aligns with my ex. Or I saw that you rep such and such, and I am very similar in tone to your client. Something like that that shows that you reached out to this person for a reason. And it could be through services like roadmap writers or competition placements. So once we vetted the screenwriters, for instance, Joey, who was our CEO, will market them, and because they know Joey and they know the caliber of writers that we vet, they're more likely to open up an email or a competition placement. That'll be a good way to be vetted as well. Okay, this thing is going ahead of me. Sorry. Okay, so those are some ways. Now, ideally, they've already read your sample, or maybe they wanted to meet about this project specifically, and this meeting is a little less general. They might have notes, they may not. Either way, it's a good thing that someone wants to meet with you, right? It's just a matter of how you approach it, whether they've read your sample or not. This is the difference. It could be a get to know, or it could be they've read it and they're ready to just discuss that. There are two types of general meetings. Discussing a specific project. This means that, okay, so like I have a pilot, I met with or a feature, and I'm meeting with a production company. They've already read the script. They're still going to ask some of the very similar questions. They're still going to want to know your background, right? Who you are as a writer, what influenced, the same kind of question I asked, what influenced your writing, what features similar to your comps, or TV shows with your comps. They're still going to want to know that, but they're going to have more maybe detailed questions about your script. And then there's the non-specific, so they haven't read anything, but maybe you're a referral, or you met at a film festival and they thought you were really cool, so like, hey, let's just get to know each other. And then either way, it's an opportunity to see if you guys can work together. Okay, so what you need to do, I always say light stalking. If you know you're going to go to a workshop, you should be doing some light stalking of the person, because you don't know if you're going to get a chance to talk to them afterwards. At the festival, if you know some people that are going to be there, do a little light stalking. Especially going to a meeting, you should do a little light stalking. So how do you do some light stalking? It could be, if it's a referral, simply ask the person who referred you, hey, you've heard of such and such, or you work such and such, what's your experience of them? What are some things they're into? Have they shared any pet peeves with you? Any things that you like, oh, bumped you a little wet or of a way that I should be aware of? Anything they really, really enjoy that I should, amp up about my writing? And then you do basic research about the company that they're with. Stay away from too personal stuff. Like, if someone has their, like in my bio, I have 5 kids. That's not a big deal. But, if I had gotten divorced or something, I wouldn't bring that up. Unless maybe you wrote a pilot about getting divorced. They loved it, and then that's something that I still would phrase it a certain way, but don't get too personal. Google IMDb Pro is your best friend. LinkedIn is your best friend. Deadline, news articles. Because one thing that I really like about IMDb Pro is that sometimes they will give you the emails so you can follow up with the person. LinkedIn too is a really good professional way to connect with people if you're co-querying, but it also gives you like their resume. Although all execs are not diligent about updating, it still gives you an idea. Or if they post something, a recent accolade, you can look at their feed. So it's really helpful. Definitely don't creep the person out, but you want to get an essence of who they are, what they're known for. And then also it gives you an opportunity to connect. So like say I met with an exec, I knew they were from Rochester. That's where I'm from. I brought that up, like, hey, I know we're both, from Rochester. What made you move out, blah, 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 whatever it was. So that's an opportunity to connect, and it shows that you took the time, you cared enough about them as a human to look into it and see what it was, who they are and what they're about. And then also there are 3 bare minimum ways, the bare minimum of research to do. 1 is watch their fresh project that aired and hit on the box office. So if you go onto their page, a lot of agencies will list their latest projects. They also will list their archive projects, like Monkey Paw they have that page, list what is currently going on and what's not. So now, let's say you want to talk about current. Usually they're so excited about what's current. You're going to go off, you're going to look and see how is it doing in the box office. Obviously, if it's not doing well, don't mention that. If it is doing well, amp that up. Is there one of their things that are in their recent or archive slate that matches the tone of what you're working on, that inspired you, something of that nature? That you should definitely know. Okay. The other thing is know about the first company they started their professional career or gained notoriety at. So execs move around a lot, right? So one week they could be at CAA, and the next week they could be at Gersh. And you may want to know, like, well, you don't want to phrase because they could have had a bad reason why they moved. But you want to say, hey, I noticed with your professional journey, you started off as a PA. What got you into that, and how did you get where you are now? What got you in passion in becoming a rep, if that's who you're speaking to? If it's a PA, a person who's risen the ranks and now they're the VP of development at a company. Tell me more about your professional journey. Were you always on the production side, or did you start off as a creative? And they usually, a lot of times, like, oh, I knew I couldn't write. Kudos to you, because I can't write. Or, I started off as a writer and I enjoyed it, but I realized like I just really like to be more part of the process. And you can get them talking about, well, what's the process of development that you really, since you've been on both sides, that you feel like a writer should know when developing a new project? These are good questions to ask, that if you had done your research, you would know to ask. And then think about your creative sensibility and storytelling voice and how it works with the company. So for instance, I had a general with a company who was interested in my pilot. And one of the questions that she asked was, well, how do you feel like your project could fit in with our company? Well, the company has started off as a multimedia company doing commercials and things of that nature. And I said, I really would be interested in partnering with this company because I also like the notion that we can make this more of an interactive show. That this particular script deals with a serial killer who doesn't realize he's a serial killer. He thinks he's a professor. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting if you could have like a class where they are able to do homework assignments as you're trying to figure out week to week who the killer is. So that showed that I did research. I knew that they were a multimedia company. I knew how this could be a collaborative development process with my piece where I can utilize something they've already are a stronghold in and also help to expand their slate. So you have to do your research to know how, when opportunity arises, you don't force it in, but these questions will come up, you're prepared. Okay, and then just helpful logistical advice. I know it sounds crazy, but always reconfirm your meeting. These people are busy. And then it could be like 5 minutes before your meeting, and they're like, oh, I have to schedule. But the day before, you say, hey, really looking forward to meeting with you tomorrow. Just confirm that I'm going to see you at 2 p.m. Everybody's all over the place. Make sure you confirm the, I know it sounds crazy, is it Eastern, Pacific, Central? So, or are they in, or GMT if they're in the UK or wherever they are. So just always reconfirm, and don't take it personal. You can have a general pushback 5 times. Don't take it personal. They just get last minute requirements and stuff. Just, it's good that they still want to meet with you, but don't take that personal. It's just like they can't control that. So just always reconfirm and then pay attention to your email just before you meet in case they have to reschedule. It's very normal. Okay, so we're going to talk about yourself. So these are how most of the, and at the end, I'm going to, hopefully one brave soul will do a mock general with me. We'll do like 10-minute mock general. Hopefully a brave soul will do it with me at the end. But generally, it's like, hey, my name is blah, 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 blah. Like, as that introduces themselves, I'm blah, 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 blah of the company. And they'll say, they're notorious. Tell me about yourself. This is not an opportunity to go on a rant, but know thyself. Really, they want to get an essence of what is your brand? Who are you? and why should I care? Okay, so this is a little bit of your politician moment here, right? So know yourself well. What is your identity and background? Like, did you grow up on a reservation? Are you from another country? Did you grow up in a trailer? You know, be very authentic. Or did you grow up like really in a really rich neighborhood and you lived in a penthouse your whole life? Whatever your truth is, it doesn't have to be trauma. Just whatever your truth is, pick the most interesting thing and share. They're going to ask you also, well, what type of story you write? This should connect to your background in some way. So if you are from another country, the types of things you may write may be about people who are adjusting to life, like a fish out of water type of thing. If you are hopeless romantic, did you like see were your parents always lovey-dovey, or were they dysfunctional and that prompted you? This is an opportunity to be a human. We want to see you as a human. So normally the types of story you write in some way, ideally, should connect to your identity or your background in some way. So that I can get the human of you. And what is your passion? Because your passion is what fuels your expertise, right? Because if you are like me and you love thrillers, I'm watching every true crime. I know I know a lot of weird stuff that I probably shouldn't know. That if the government checked my computer, they probably would be like, "Ooh, let's flag her," because I'm just really interested in it. And it becomes a passion, and that passion becomes, you're not expected to know all things, but what are you passionate about? What fuels a passion? Where does that come from? Does it connect to something that happened to you when you were younger, or what is it? And then who are your TV filmmaker parents, right? So like for me, if Jordan Peele and Shonda Rhimes decided to get together and have a writer baby, that probably most closest to my tone. So these are the things you kind of want to know yourself, make up your identity, your background, type stories, right, your passion, expertise, and your TV filmmaker parents. And that all of that culminates into becoming your writer brand. So I'm gonna give you a moment to actually do that. I'm gonna give you another 5 minutes. I want you to know thyself. Well, I'm gonna give you to the end of the song. So it might not be a full 5 minutes, but I'm gonna give you to an end of a song. And I want you to know thyself in this very brief, because again, general meetings only tend to only be 30 minutes. So you want to know thyself within two minutes. I want you to figure out, when you write down, your identity, background, how it ties into the type of stories you write. So you kind of touched on that, some of you, a little bit earlier. Your passion, expertise, how that also ties back into the stories you write. So everything should be building on each other. And then who would be your TV or film parents? You could be Michael Bay and it could be Michael Bay and Steven Spielberg. I don't know. So either your TV parents if you're primarily in TV, or your film parents if you primarily write film. So we're going to take it to the end of the song, and I'm going to have you guys do that. So your time. Okay, awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so as I said, I will not ask you to do something I am not willing to do. So I'll tell you about me. So, so I'll tell you about me. So I am going to move that so I can see it. Okay, so I am a Caribbean American screenwriter who was raised in public housing by hardworking Bajan immigrants. I did not discover that I am Black until I attended my majority white boarding high school with peers that assumed I was every stereotype they'd ever seen on TV. It was at this Quaker school that I began to define my Blackness against a backdrop of people trying to determine it for me. My experiences have led me to write thrillers and dramas about culturally diverse characters struggling with self-acceptance. I enjoy exploring this premise in both the TV and feature space. This theme is evident in the to-be original film I wrote called Dress for Success. I thrive in developing content that challenges the monolithic perception of the Black experience. If Jordan Peele and Shonda Rhimes had a creative baby, it looks something like me. So would you say all of this, or not necessarily, but it gives you a very clear what my brand is, and you will learn how to shorten it down, which I will tell you the condensed version. But first, I want to hear who is willing to share theirs. Who's willing to tell me what their brand is? Rachel, is your hand up, new up, or up from before?
Oh, sorry, it's up from before. I mean, I could share if,
Sure, go
but
ahead.
like if no one else, I don't know. I know I already spoke, so I don't want to take time away if someone else wants to go.
Well, nobody's hand is up yet, so go ahead.
Okay. Hold on, let me sit down and turn my camera on. Okay, hello. Sorry, I got caught in the rain, but I am now home. So, yeah, my name is Rachel. I grew up in a small town that's about 30 minutes outside of New York City. Um, I'm gonna repeat some of the same stuff, but just pretend I didn't say this earlier.
Perfect.
So, I'm 24 years old. I'm a screenwriter and a filmmaker. I've been working in the industry mostly as a production assistant, either on set or in the office the past 3 years. And writing is really just what I've always wanted to do. I've wanted to do it since I was 5 years old. And I grew up in this very small town, 1 square mile town. That's about 30 minutes outside of New York City. And it was this very homogeneous town in a lot of ways. Like it was just everyone was kind of the same, and like everyone was, straight, cisgender, like perfectly healthy, Ivy League bound. Like it was a very just like um yeah, just a place where it's like everyone was supposed to fit this certain image, and I always felt like I didn't fit that image. And there were all these things about myself, like being queer, being non-binary, like being neurodivergent, like things that I never even discovered about myself until after I left my hometown, after, when I went to college. Um, and I kind of realized a big part of it was because whenever I would see, well, first of all, a lot of stories growing up that I would watch didn't really touch on those subjects. And when they did, it was a very kind of like similar to what you were saying, Tiffany, it was a very just kind of like monolithic view of like, this is what queerness is, like, this is what, mental illness looks like. And especially for coming of age stories, which is something that I'm really interested in. So I went to college, I started studying, I started working in film. I realized that comedy was really the genre that spoke to me about just the way to kind of explore these more difficult issues in a way that is still uplifting to people. So, I think there's a time and a space to look at some of the darker sides and those real lived experiences. But I think, people like with mental illness and who are queer or, who have different intersectionality, different backgrounds, like they face so many difficulties already that it's nice to have a space that's like they can explore those parts of themselves while also still feeling good about it and still laughing. And so I really want to just
create stories that look at kind of the unexplored corners of those topics. So like, for example, I just finished filming my first short film this past spring. It's called Teen Gay Fairy Tale. And it's about this lax bro who comes out as gay. And everyone's like, oh my God, there's a gay guy. And so they assume that he's now in love with the only other gay kid in school, even though the two of them have nothing in common. So it's kind of like this coming of age satire, queer satire, about like what kids think queerness is supposed to look like in high schools. So stories like that, stories that just are kind of out there, and really, I don't know, try something new. So for me, I feel like I didn't actually get enough time to write down my filmmaking parents, but Greta Gerwig is someone that I'd say like Greta Gerwig and Taika Waititi, if the two of them had a baby. They're two filmmakers that I really, really admire, and writers that I really, really admire. So if they had a kooky, crazy, misshapen baby, that would be me.
Perfect. That was perfect, Rachel. You were vulnerable, you were human, and you kept building. So I understood how, and you took a moment to connect. So you took a moment to say, I heard what you said. This is how I connected with you. And I don't have to be queer to understand that feeling of needing to and wanting and desiring to belong, or figuring out who you are when people are defining who you are in that space. And I really enjoyed the fact that you threw in there that you're doing a short that is based off of an experience that you've already introduced me to, because it shows me you can take a project from concept to writing to now all the way to the finish line. So you did a great job of establishing who you are, being vulnerable, being human, what your brand is, what your passion is, and I know why, based on your personal experience, and that you are an active creative. You're creating, so you did a brilliant job. That was awesome. So that would
Thank
make
you.
Question. So very good job, Rachel. And thank you for being vulnerable in front of everybody. That was awesome.
Of course. Thank you so much for your feedback. Yeah, and thank you for letting me share. It was really nice.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share? Anybody? There's no right or wrong. Let us get to know you. Okay. Go ahead, Saeed.
Okay, so I'm Saeed. I'm 32 years old. I'm from Iran. I'm a Middle Eastern. We face so many human rights issues. We face so many problems and issues with sanctions and all the problems with the connection, and we don't even have like a good speed up internet connection. At the same time, our history is filled with stories. Our history is filled with amazing stories that I want to tell them. So that makes me to speak louder. That makes me to tell the stories that mostly happens here, and I feel them and I see them in my everyday lives. So I know I have this opportunity to make these dramatic stories, make them as a filmmaker, and share them to the whole world. I'm a full-time screenwriter. As I'm talking, my screenplays, as in right now, have acquired many accolades in different screenwriting competitions. I'm a filmmaker. I made a short like a couple of years ago, which was in screen in different international festivals. Right now, I'm working on my second short film, which is called Blood Enough, which is a short drama thriller, which is about an old woman oppressing tradition that happened in Iran many years ago, but still happening in some far away from city parts in villagers, which they make a woman to marry out of force when one of the male members of the tribe of the village do commit a murder. To
Wow.
prevent the murder to from the other side, the murder family should give out a lady to a victim family so they settle down. And this is something that I'm working on, which I'm really excited about, because I believe that there are so many exotic, amazing places, rituals, people, how they look, how they dress, that I would love to share it to the world. And for my filmmaker parents, I love Peter Jackson and Paul Thomas Anderson. I love Peter Jackson because of his world building and the things that he has done, that Lord of the Rings. I mean, things that he was involved in, and Paul Thomas Anderson because of his amazing artistic form of camera, and he's an author. He has his own style, and I love it. And thank you.
Very good, Saeed. And are you currently in the Middle East?
Yes, I'm in Iran. I'm living in Iran.
Very cool. I think that you have a very unique perspective because you're still
Thank you.
physically there, which is very intriguing. And I think whenever you say something is based on a unique cultural experience or like a folklore or like a tradition that is currently happening, it's like you have a way to expose people to a whole new market. It's making me think of like how Jordan Peele recently produced Monkey Man. And
Oh,
that
yeah, I watched that film.
yeah, and that he's
Yeah.
actively exploring other cultures, like going over there. So I think you're in a very interesting, unique, and intriguing space, because I'm sure there's so many stories that we don't know about in the U.S., and you have this very unique lens to bring us in and still find a way to make us connect to that experience. So I love that you lead with that, like, hey, I'm here, this is where I am, this is my story, this is my culture. So I think you did a great job. It's very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiffany. This session is amazing. And one last question. Are we gonna have the opportunity to borrow your amazing presentation, or is it
Well,
off
it's going to
limits?
be streaming, so you'll be able to watch it again. I won't be able to send it to you, but
Oh,
I
okay.
do believe
Great.
on YouTube. So if you want to watch it again, you'll be able to.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Anybody else want to share before we go on? You guys are doing great. You guys like don't even need me. Anybody else? Okay. Yes, go ahead. Yay, Jennifer. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, hello. Sorry, I was like walking earlier, so and it was not good. Out in Chicago, it's a windy city and it's very windy today. Can you hear me okay? My headphones are
Yes.
mid. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. This has been so eye-opening, and I appreciate the opportunity to, do a little bit of a mock general meeting because practice makes perfect. So thank you for that. I am Jenny. I am originally from Nebraska, a tiny little town. It's like 1,200 people. And then I ended up traveling all over the world, eventually landing here in Chicago, studied at Second City, IO, some improv places down in Austin, thinking that, you know what, I'm really gonna be a comedian because I am funny. I think I'm funny, but I am funny. And then when the pandemic hit, I was kind of forced to take a U-turn on my writing and do something more insular, and decided to take on writing my first feature. So in 2020, I wrote a feature, learned how to do scripts instead of sketches, and I really fell in love with writing, and that's where I've been since, working in the film industry here in Chicago. And I now have a few scripts in production here, making movies with friends, but also making movies in the corporate space, in the indie world. And I've learned that I really like writing character-driven stories. So it's like, what would happen if this character was here? Focusing a lot on the cult aspect of things. I feel like I always bear the lead with this, but I accidentally joined a cult out of high school. So
Lead with that. I have a friend like that too. You lead with that. But go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. It was like a Christian cult that, was parading itself as a school, but like they tore me away from my family, my friends. I wasn't allowed to date my first year, which I was like really okay with, but I wasn't allowed to talk to people of the opposite gender at all, like, or have any kind of connection unless they were literally my brother. And looking back, I was like, oh, I think I was in a cult. So I have a hour-long drama that I'm writing about that. But I also have a short that's going into production, and it's studying the relationship of gaslighting between friends and not necessarily between lovers, and like what that looks like. I don't know if I have parents per se, film parents, but if I could write something, I would love to write something in the will of like or in the realm of Will Arnett. Like that character, I watch Arrested Development almost every night, but then also Flaked is brilliant with the dialogue. And I think that the most authentic thing about those is just how much those characters stay in character and true to themselves. And that's what makes it a great film and great shows.
Very cool. Very cool, Jen. Yes, very interesting. It's interesting to don't shy away from the cult. Like I have the friend of mine who I don't know how she stumbled into the cult. I don't know how people stumble into the cult, but I always find it interesting. She shies away from leading with it too, but I think it's very, very interesting. But it automatically perks the person's ear. Because imagine you might have been the 10th person they met with that today, right? So they may be a little lethargic. They may be, as soon as you say cult, they're like, wait, you were doing what? Where were I? You know what I mean? So that's why I would say don't shy away from it. I understand you may think there may be a stigma around it, or there's no, not in screenwriting. Screenwriting, that makes you interesting. You know what I mean? Maybe
right.
People might think it's like, well, why? But in screenwriting, that makes you interesting. It makes me want to know what about your background led you to, how do you stumble on it? How do you, and it's an interesting thing to explore, like how, like, are you a fish out of water? Like you moved around and maybe you were did you grow up in a secluded area where you didn't see the signs? Or maybe you were street savvy and they just like really were good at tricking you. But like a cool elevator pitch would be something like, my name is Jenny. You know, I moved around a lot, came to Chicago, and accidentally joined a cult. Like, make that line up. How did you go from this town to this town and accidentally join? You know, now I'm like, what? And now I want to hear what you have next. Like, what are you going to say next? And I probably will ask you, I'm nosy, so I would ask you a lot more questions. But don't shy away from it. It makes you who you are as a creative and probably impacts who you are as a human. So don't ever shy away from things like that. You did a great job. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
You made me giggle. You made me giggle. And it's okay not to know who your parents are, because I mean, it's just a question that they don't phrase like that, but they may say like something like, well, whose career path do you most want to emulate, or something like that's where that comes in. They don't really say your parents. So if there's somebody that is similar, like a career path you may want to take, that's something. And the question doesn't always come up, but it can come up. So that's really what that question comes from. But great job. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Anybody else want to share before? You guys are interesting. Anything else? Anybody else want to share before we move on? Going once, going twice. Okay. Not going to pressure you. All right. Okay, so all of the stuff we're working on is really to help you build your brand as a writer. Who is your legacy? So, you know, like the brand is everything, right? Now, I'm not going to say like a lot of people are like, I don't want to be pigeonholed. You know, like me, and I get that because like I love thriller, but I'm also a parent. So if I come up with a really good idea for a kid's story, I may want to do that too, right? But when you're starting, and look at Jordan Peele. When Jordan Peele came on the scene, we knew him for comedy, right? All his amazing sketches, you know, with Keenan, and he made you laugh. And then, pooh, here comes Get Out, right? But who he built his brand off initially was comedy. So it doesn't mean you have to get pigeonholed, but you have to know how you're going to market yourself when you first start, right? So that's what your brand is. What will make your conversation point when there's a staffing opportunity if you're doing a TV? And I want you to have the audacity to own your brand. So like when I went into my meeting with Marvista, I said, you know, my name, you know, I'm Tiffany. I'm a Caribbean American screenwriter, you know, and my parents, so I'm first generation born here. My parents immigrated here. And I started to realize that like at some point in my life, I started to realize like there's a difference between the Black American experience and the Black Caribbean American experience. We're all different. I really wanted to dispel the monolithic version of that. And a lot of the stuff that I write is through the lens of the Caribbean perspective, because I really want to champion that. And the meeting ended with, well, if we ever need a Caribbean screenwriter, we'll reach out. So in my mind, we're not in demand, people, right? So I'm not going to get that call. That's how I left that meeting. But it was a really good meeting. And then 6 months later, I got an email that said, Tiffany, we're looking for a Caribbean American screenwriter. I'm going to connect you. And it was just so, but if I hadn't had the audacity to own my brand, I wouldn't have stuck out as a person on her roster to email when that opportunity. So build it and they shall come. Build your brand and it shall come. To thine own self be true. Okay. So know your brand. How am I going to know you? Jenny is the person I call, and Rachel, people I call if I'm going to do comedy. If I'm looking for maybe a cultural perspective from a region that I don't get to see often, I'm going to call Saeed. We want to know who we call. When you can watch a trailer and know it's a Tyler Perry movie, even if Medea is not in it, because he deals with the same kind of like family traumas over it. You could guess. You could see Nope and the symbolism and, putting people of color in situations you normally don't see them in, right? Like you knew they were people that were cowgirls, cowboys, but you don't really get to see that story. You say, well, there might be a Jordan, or even like when I saw the Monkey Man, I knew before we even got to the end of the trailer that was a Jordan Peele. I just knew it, that because he's established his brand. So you have to do the same thing. What is your brand? And it's okay. How do you become self-aware to know what your brand is? So you got to sell yourself, right? Okay. What makes you drink a Pepsi or a Coke, or a Pepsi or a Sprite, or Avion versus Poland Spring? What about their brand makes you buy it? Or why do you go to McDonald's over Burger King, or Wendy's over McDonald's? What is it about their brand? Do you miss Ronald McDonald? That was a big thing when I was younger. Now they don't have the clown anymore. I don't know what that's about, why they got rid of the clown. Or one of the things that I used to remember about Taco Bell was the dog. I kind of miss the dog, right? So I'm giving my age away here. But there's something that's associated. So what are we going to associate with you? What is going to be your brand? Ask your friends. If you're not sure, a lot of you guys probably have creative friends. Hey, when you think about me and my stories, what do you think of? That's a good place to start if you're not sure. Read to find out what are the patterns of your work. Are there themes that are constantly showing up in your work? And that can be part of your brand. If you're constantly talking about queer-centric stories, but from the perspective of maybe someone who's overcome a trauma, maybe that's part of your brand. Are people overcoming traumas and coming to self-acceptance? A lot of people go to comedy who have experienced pain as a way to cope. Maybe that's part of your brand, is laughing through your pain, something like that. And then the reason why they need to know this, they need to know what kind of TV show you could write on, or outside of TV show, what kind of writing assignments. So people try to, clown on Lifetime and Tubi and Lifetime, Tubi, what's the other bit? Hallmark. But these are great ways to break in. Shonda broke in writing for TV. So if a writing assignment comes up, how would they know to pitch you based on your brand? Where are you going to be? And I would also, a good place to start is by writing out all your log lines. Ooh, I hate a log line, but they're so important, right? They're a good way to summarize and to see if you know the plot. What is, your log line, the thing that would show up on your Netflix blurb at the bottom, or the TV guide on the cable, right? Look at your log lines. Are there similar themes in your log line if you're not sure, if you're trying to figure out what your brand is? And then there's always a through line. You could write 50 different things, and there's always a through line. There's always that underdog, or the messed up families, or there's grief, or there's redemption, there's madness, or there's sex, or, this, inappropriate power dynamic, there's motherhood. There's always something. No matter if you pepper it with thriller, you pepper it with slasher, you pepper it with comedy, you pepper it with drama, you pepper it with whatever your seasoning has this through line. This is your meat of choice, or your plant of choice if you're vegetarian or vegan, that you're constantly seasoning in different ways and cooking up. But there's something there that ties all of your stories together. You got to figure out what that is if you don't know already. And this could take some self-exploration. It's the reason why you write what you write. And it's something that only you could write from your perspective. So dig into that. All right. And then, okay, so let's get into the logistics of it. What happens during the meeting? Well, of course, first of all, you want to be polite, right? Nobody wants to hang out with a jerk, unless you're into that thing. If you're a masochist, I don't know. But in general, even if the exec's kind of a jerk, you can't be a jerk. Be your nice self. Even if you're having a bad day, mentally prepare yourself. Also, don't rely on them to lead. Okay, first, and also, sometimes I've gone to meetings and I can get distracted, like a good shade of lipstick. I'm going to start the conversation. Where'd you get that lipstick? You know what I mean? Because I got to get out the way because I need to find out where I can get some, right? But it also shows I'm human. Like, we're just here to hang out. We're just here to talk. It's low stakes. Don't go into a meeting that this is going to make your career, or this is going to break your career. It's too much pressure. This is just a conversation. So, and don't rely on them to lead the question. Don't overpower the question. Don't interrupt them. But don't rely on them. If it's starting off slow, they may be like, again, you could have been the 10th meeting and they're just over it today. I've had a general meeting with a showrunner, and I could tell just from her face that she had a hard day. I could tell from her side. And the general meeting started off with, tell me, just like what's going on? And then she just offloaded. That's how we spent our first 10 minutes. And then we were able to have a conversation. You need to get that out the way. Take a moment to feel the person out. Don't ask for something that's not freely given. So for instance, I've had someone pitch to me, and at the end of the pitch, I'm just meeting this person. What can you do for me? I don't know you, And I always say, listen, we know that this is a transactional industry, right? We're here to give a product, make money off the product. Everybody knows that. But you don't want to feel like that. Like, think about if you go to a car dealership, everybody knows you're there to potentially buy a car. We know the car sales is there to try to sell you a car, but you don't want to feel like all you want is my money, right? It's the same thing. They don't want to feel like that's all you care about. They want to feel like it's going to be a partnership. You don't want to feel like just a commodity that they're trying to make money off of. Even though they want to figure out they can make money off of you. It has to, don't just leave the money on the dresser. Make me feel like you like me. Okay, something like that. If you have a pitch for a project, they may be interested. Be cognizant of time, right? Pitches should not drone on and on and on and on. Try to get your pitch to 3 minutes. It could be the most complicated script, right? You could have layers upon layers upon layers. Right? You could literally be Ogre from Shrek, right? Ogres have layers. Your script has layers. You still have to figure out your what we call trailer sizzler moments, plot points, beats of your feature, or if you're doing a TV series, it needs to be quick what the pilot is and the characters in that world, and then what the story engine is. And if it's not a limited series, what are the next 2-3 seasons? And you need to be able to fit pilot, characters up to season 3 in a 3-minute pitch, and it can be done. I do it all the time. And then leave it up to the exec to ask you more questions and to want to unveil those layers. But I don't need to know that, like, Tommy goes to the park and falls in love with Susie. Okay. Or if you were pitching me Insecure, I'd be intrigued to say, okay, this character raps to themselves, but okay, what is it about, right? And always remember to be a human first and a writer second. So that means taking a breath because your exec is having a hard time. I've heard of people, having meetings where the kid runs in with the food and you lost them to Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it can happen. They're human. You're like, oh, I can't wait to eat too later. You know what I mean? Reel them back in. Distractions happen. You know, people's pets will do weird things in the back. If you don't have a pet, you know, you could talk about that's the reason why you don't have pets. Or it could be that you have a dog too, or maybe you had a dog when you were a kid, or a cat when you were a kid, or some interesting story, but something to connect with the human person first. Because listen, the reality is, and you could attest to this, half the times you won't remember what a person said, but you will remember how they made you feel. And these execs will remember how you made them feel. And they want to know, and even with a rep, they want to know they can send you into a room and you can charm that room because you're a human first and a writer second. So it's very important. Okay, so what are some ways that you can break the ice? Remember, you should have done your light stalking, right? So if you were coming to meet me, you would have quickly done the bio. Maybe you watched the movie that I wrote. You didn't even have to like it, right? Could you be like, hey, I connected with your cultural inclusion thing, or this is very timely because you know we were in a strike, or if it was that, how did you know? I see that you have 5 kids. I'm very open about talking about my kids, so that's fine. How do you balance that? You know, like, you know, I've held off on starting a family of my own because I'm still trying to do that. It could be anything. Just do some little small talk doesn't hurt. You know, like small talk doesn't hurt in some ways. Like when you say small talk is the weather. Unless it's like you guys grew up in the same area. Like you mentioned Rochester and a person go, it's inevitable you're gonna start talking about, is it cold yet? Automatic. Sometimes it snows here in June. It's just automatic gonna come up, right? Some things are going to come up. But you don't want to stick on weather, but you want to listen to what the exec is saying and pick up something, right? So like if an exec mentions, oh my God, I'm so tired. I can't wait till I'm about to go to Jamaica. You go to Jamaica. I've always wanted to go to Jamaica. What's the best place? Are you going to stay at a resort? What's the best place? You know, what do you do when you're there? Take a moment. I've always wanted to shoot a project in Jamaica. What's the filming scene like out there? Do you know? Something like that. Simple questions you can ask, like, where are you from? You can share where you're from, see if there's a connection there. What do you miss most about home? Because people move around a lot. Or if the person moved to LA to start their career, do you ever think about going back? Or do you have a time frame of going back? You could share nostalgic coming of age family comedies. Maybe you have common movies. Obviously, you're going to want to talk about what kind of projects at some point that they're looking for. Any films that inspire you. You know, are you into Hitchcockian psychological thriller? These are all different simple ways that you can lead a conversation. If it's going slow, you can break the ice and get to know them. Again, you're being human, right? We're on a date here, right? What would you do if the date starts to lull? That's the kind of thing you're thinking. What would you do if your date started to lull? This is what you're doing during the meeting. And sometimes the exec is on it, and you just, you know, you're answering proof. The questions are going quick. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth. And sometimes you may think, why did they even do this meeting? Because they don't seem interested. They could just have a poker face on. Or they could just have what we call resting bitch face. That's just who they are. But you be who you are and you pull them in. Okay. When you're thinking of what projects to share, well, obviously, if you got the meeting for a specific project, you want to share that. You want to talk about that specific project first. And then they may ask, what else are you working on right now? It's okay to share projects that you're currently developing. So you could say, well, in my completed polish, I have blah, 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 blah. And then what I've started working on now is blah. And I'm in this stage. Because what could happen is they could be like, oh, well, when you finish that, can you shoot that over? And then what do you go back and do? You write crazy, right? So be prepared for that. And then the way you decide on what they're working on next, if you've, you know, coaxed them and you found out what else they're working on, you may, like, they say, oh, you know, we're really trying to found is doing really, really well. We're trying to figure out we can come up with a procedural to match that network. What procedural do you have to pull out your butt, right? Because you kind of would have done some research and seen what was already in Slate. Now, it could be just because they have all this stuff in the Slate, they could be trying to branch out and do other things. They could be like, oh, we've done dramas, but now we're trying to do thrillers. That could always happen. That's why that's why what are you guys working on, looking to do next? What's the next mandate up? But be prepared, listen to what they're saying they're working on or looking for, and then be prepared to say, what else are you working on? Then you share that. Don't front load everything. When I say by front load is when you're doing the intro and you're saying, and you're saying your writer brand, that's not an opportunity then to like riddle off every single thing. That will come naturally during the course of the conversation. So don't front load everything, but inevitably you will get to that question of what are you working on next? Because they want to know you're not a one-trick pony. And then always yes and your way back to why we came to talk, right? So are you available to, like, what does your schedule currently look like? Oh yeah, I'm always available, even if you're not. If you got 10 jobs available. If they ask, well, how long does it normally take you to write a script? Well, I'm really good with time constraints. Who wouldn't want the ideal 6 months to fully complete the development process? But I understand sometimes you only have a month, depending on where you are in the production space, and I'm ready to go. I can make sure I put this time. So whatever it is, it's always yes and. Do you have a pitch deck for that project? Even if you don't, yes. And I would like to do some edits on it so I can get it to you in about a week, right? Because then if you don't have it, you're gonna go right real fast, right? And it's always a possibility that that conversation will teeter off before you're able to make connection. That's okay. Just pick it up. Again, we're on a date. You got 30 minutes or however long, and please be respectful of the time. If they say 30 minutes, it's 30 minutes, unless they keep pushing it, but you don't push it. And just you continue, always try to find that transition. If it's lulling on the lipstick, like I brought the lipstick, we keep talking about Mac. Like, I had a character that I wrote, blah, blah, blah. Figure out how you're going to push it on to serve your needs. And then just, when everything else fails, people like to talk about themselves. So don't be afraid to ask these, like, what are you watching? Like, what do you like to watch right now? What are you most excited about? I know you can't share details about what projects you're working on, but is there a specific type of project that you're working on that you're excited about with your company? People don't mind talking about themselves. Soft pitching. And then it's always from a collaborative space, not a buy me, I need you, right? It's always, remember, development, whether you're doing a movie, if you're doing a movie, you're going to get like 40 pages of development notes. If you're doing a TV show, it's probably going to be even more. Or they want to know, hey, if we're doing ground up, do you need to be the showrunner? Do you mind rewriting? If we have to bring in an outside showrunner, do you mind rewriting? So always collaborative, right? I'm open to do this, I'm open to do that, right? And then be prepared to soft pitch. You can, so always have, like, I always say, like 6 ideas, 5 to 6, all these in your head, again, because we're looking at longevity. If that first relationship goes really well, what can we work on next together? Okay, so be prepared to just quit. Okay, make it or break it. Manipulate the cathartic emotion. I know manipulate sounds bad, but isn't that what we're doing as writers? We're manipulating the audience to laugh, we're manipulating the audience to cry, we're manipulating the audience to be scared. You're doing the same thing in a meeting. Make me feel something. Remember, again, I may not remember everything you said, but I'll remember how you made me feel. They'll remember how you made them feel. Activate their imagination. You say, imagine this, picture this, and then set the space for your script, right? We're on a beach. The plane just crashed. What do? Pause. Give them a chance to envision it. Know the hook and the buyer. The hook should not. So if I'm going to pitch to Steven Spielberg the next Jurassic Park, I better have a really new, interesting monster that he hasn't, well, not monster, but dinosaur or whatever creature he hasn't seen. Or I just recently heard there's a shark that can live up to 1,000 years, which is wild to me. And we haven't had a movie about that yet. Just heard about this shark. I forget what the name of the shark is, what species, but think something interesting that he's familiar with, but different. Did you know that there was a shark now that they just recently discovered that can live up to 1,000 years? And then encourage the participation. So what do you think about it? Or what would you do? Or open-ended questions, right? That encourage them to talk to you too. The break it stuff, bogging down the synopsis between, again, I don't need to know that Susie meant, if I'm pitching The Princess Bride, I love that movie, right? I don't need to know that, all the bogged down details of when they kiss and exactly that grandpa, that the kid's sick, and just the higher level stuff. It's about a lost love, and she thinks he's dead, and now she's about to marry this horrible human. But when he suddenly comes back to life, when he has to save her life, something like that, like higher level stuff. I don't need all the pretty juicy, even though it's so good, the movie, right? I don't need all the juicy details. Refusing to give spoilers. I hate when people end their stuff when you ask the question and they go, you have to read it to find out. No, I don't, right? Remember, these people are buying into you. Would you buy a car without knowing what engine, what gas, if they refuse to tell you who was the company that made the car? You're not going to want to really, no, drive it. Does it have any, can I see the Carfax? Well, no, you got to drive it to see if it stops. You imagine someone saying that to you, you wouldn't do that. So let them know that they're thinking about giving you money or bringing you on as a client. Expecting them to know what you don't tell them. So the plot holes, the plot holes in your head, but they don't know because you haven't told them. So don't assume they know. Apologizing for your flaws. It's my first time type. Don't talk about anything negative. You come in. Again, they can have a moment, right? You don't have a moment. Don't apologize for existing. You apologize if you step on somebody's toes. You apologize if you accidentally eat someone's sandwich. I don't know how you accidentally do that, but it's something you should apologize for. But being you, never apologize for who you are. And then killing characters' arcs or just, again, bogging down the plot. Overall character arcs, your killer is going to go from killing to like a major character. Maybe your serial killer is going to go from being a killer to now, for some reason, he's going to become kind of like Dexter, where he's still kind of killing because that's the nature of the beast, but he's killing for good, right? He's cleaning up the streets. That's a big character, but we don't need to get into bogged down details of it. Okay, so actionable next steps. You finish up, they go, hey, we're going to do a call to arms. So you want to say stuff like, did they mention any IP that they're adapting? Say, hey, I'm reading this book. I read that book too. I'm interested in doing that too. If you're still looking for a writer to adapt, I'm an expert on that. I know everything about cults. Well, not everything, but I stumbled on cults. I'm interested in, I read this book. Or maybe you're a sex positive person and you've read every Zane book and you always want to adapt a Zane book and they're open to it. Or doing the second 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know, like 51 Shades of Grey. I don't know. You knew it. You learned a new shade of gray. And then, if you haven't read it, read it and follow up. Or is there a genre they're dying to crack? Come up with a really cool one-page written pitch. And then, of course, if they ask, hey, if you say I'm working on this and they say, hey, when you finish a shoot over, you shoot it over. Yeah, give me like a month, or whatever, be realistic where you are in your project. And I'll get it over to you. And then you finish that script and you send the email, say, hey, it was so great to meet you. Like I promised, I finished up the draft and I just want to shoot this over to you. And then if you have anything that was recently greenlit, of course, share that. And then if they had anything that was recent, always congratulate them. Okay, and then when you're following up after the meeting, goes without saying, you say a thank you, something that stood out to you about what they said. If they ask you for a pitch deck, you already have it, send it over. And again, always be very honest with what you have ready to go. If they didn't ask for material, please don't send over things they didn't ask for, but just, always thank them. And, whatever they did ask for, you send. What they did not ask for, do not volunteer over. Okay, and then you let it go, right? So in the end, because a lot of times people are anxious afterwards, and then they don't just let it go. Do the meeting and move on. So what will be, and sometimes these meetings take 6 months, 9 months, a year later, you may get it. 2 years later, you may get it. One thing about the guy who did Squid Games, it says it took him 12 years to be an overnight success. This is not a sprint, it is a marathon. You do your meeting, keep pushing. Next meeting, keep it pushing. Always keep it pushing. Okay, we're just gonna really quickly have time for one person, so I want to respect everybody's time. But I did promise a mock general. So we're gonna one person who's willing to do like a 5 to 10. I will be the exec, and you will be the person, the creative coming in. And also, too, guys, I want you to know, everybody who attended here, you get 20% off. Please take down this code, the ITWIFF24. You will get 20% off site-wide, on our website, www.roadmapwriters.com, on any product. So please take that down. But does anybody, I'll offer to you, if you don't want to do it, I will respect that. But does anybody want to try to do a mock general in front of everybody where I'm the exec and you are you? Up to you. If you don't, I will respect it, but it's up to you guys. Going once. Ooh, no takers. Going twice. Nobody wants to hear the questions to come out? All right, no takers, not a problem. But I do hope that ultimately you guys are leaving this with more information than you came in with. Maybe you had a little chuckle, or something that you feel like you've walked away with, and maybe you feel more empowered about who you are and what your brand is. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit with me on a Saturday and learn some things. And before we wrap up, just see, does anybody have any questions? And of course, if you think of something later, you can always email me at tiffany@roadmapwriters.com. But I'll make sure that, does anybody have any questions before we go? Yes, Jennifer.
Hey, hello. So I feel like my portfolio is about in a place where I can start taking more generals or just reaching out to people. And I've reached out to indie producers, right, about producing a script probably for free or for very little money. But what steps can I take now to start securing payment and making this more of a career than just something I'm doing as a hustle?
Great question. So what I would say to do is, one, you're already shooting something, right? You have something that you're,
and as part of being human, so sorry, I'm cat sitting and this cat suddenly doesn't like me. So if I scream, I'm gonna mute myself. Okay. Go ahead.
You're one of the people that's producing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once you produce something, one, you want to start getting on the festival circuit, because that shows that you have that gets your name out there. The way you start getting paid gigs, a lot of times it's referrals or being vetted, and it's not doing things for free, right? So even if you're working for indie, you should be charging probably like $5,000. That's still on the low end, right? Because the WGA and non-union versus union, I get it. You're going to get lowballed when you're not in the union. But if you're doing just like, you have to equate, I guess the best thing I say to you is, people won't equate value to your work until you equate value to your work. So you should be charging something that is reflective of your time. Whether it could be that you're doing a back-end deal. Maybe the person can't afford to do it, but then you should do a collaborative agreement, maybe when you're getting 20% on the back end. or they're going to pay you 25,000 of the profit, or whatever it is, the agreement that you work out. But you have to assign a value to yourself so that people know that you're serious and that they will start paying you. But the more meetings you take, you'll do that. And then also open writing them. So like I said, Lifetime is already at Lifetime and Tubi and Lifetime, Tubi, and what is the other? Hallmark. Thank you.
I was listening.
All right, thank you. The big threes, because Tubi's really stepping that game up, right? They're already working on their slate for 2025 because they have so much to fill up. And you literally could look on IMDb Pro, look and see what projects they did, who the writers were, and who the producers were on the project. And you could find their emails either on, you could connect with them on LinkedIn, you could connect with them on IMDb Pro, get the information on IMDb Pro. And you could reach out to them with cold query. Christmas time is coming up. If you don't have a Christmas thing in your slate, and know what you're doing with your life, you gotta get your Christmas thing in. And these are things that you could start getting writing assignments with. Join, if you're not already part of a screenwriting community, there's so many on Facebook. People post opportunities in those groups. Don't ignore them. Of course, vet them to make sure what's not a scam, whatever. Do that, but you need to, if you can get like I'm always offering to volunteer on a set. That's a good way to meet people. Yeah, you're giving up your time, but you're learning and people are seeing you. So these all will lead to paid jobs, but that's how you have to get your name out there. You have to start equating a value to your work, whether it's on the front loaded, they're paying you up front, or you have a collaboration agreement and you're getting something on the back end. But that's how you start to get paid work.
Great, thank you. And I guess I should say I actually had one of my scripts was a semi-finalist in Imagine This Women's Film Festival. So going down that road now. Yeah, Abby needs a friend. She like joins an MLM and it turns out it's a deadly cult. Surprise, back to the cult.
Yes, that's important. Listen, put all this stuff and like establish your brand on your Instagram. Like post these accolades on your Instagram, you know. Those Netflix videos are a little interesting where they're doing the nails now with the master shows, but you could come up, maybe you have your own little quirky thing that establishes you as a writer. But yeah, just keep pushing yourself and always equate. Remember, your time is money. Your creation is money. It all becomes monetary. So, and if you're going to do something for free up front, make sure you're getting something on the back end, or you're doing it because it serves you to say, hey, I have a proof of concept, or I have a work to show you, because a lot of times people don't like to read, but maybe they'll watch something for 10 minutes. Unless it's serving you, don't do it for free. You know, it has to be something you really believe in if you're going to do it for free, because writing is a lot of work.
Thank you.
No. Any other questions that you guys have? Yes, Rachel.
Hello again. Thank you all so much. Anyways, I know I said it before, but I just want to say thank you all so much for sharing. And it is interesting because I feel like I am more on the younger side. I'm pretty early on in my career. And I have started thinking about like cold calling and reaching out to people and just kind of like putting myself out there. But I was wondering, and I'm sure there's no like proper direct answer to this. But like, when do you think is a good time? Like, when do you think a person should start like reaching out to people in the sense of like, should they have like multiple projects they've made under their belt? Should they have gone to festival? Like, I guess when do you think is like a good point to start reaching out to people?
So great question. I would say you should have at least 2 to 3 projects, because they will, like, let's say they read your script because they love it. It aligns with, maybe something they already have in their roster, or maybe you read in Variety something that and everybody should be reading the trades. That the company's looking to do next, and they read it, they loved the core query. Then I'm like, oh, what else do you have? So you want to have something else that you can send to, and you want to make sure you feel like it's polished. So you've done script coverage on it. Maybe you're part of a writer, what do you call those? A writer's
group. Yeah, sure.
and you guys, share and give notes on these. So it's gone through a couple of rounds, and now you feel good about it. Like 2 to 3. If you have 2 to 3 solid scripts, I would say go ahead, go for it. Do
Okay.
the research on the writers that are. So if there's a show that matches, like they say it's the L Word or Queer Eye or whatever it is,
Sure.
go on IMDb Pro, see who are the writers on there, who's repping them, what producers are on the show. Those are the people you would start with reaching out to.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Neza?
Kind of similar to what was just asked. I'm curious how important you view agents and managers are in the process of getting in front of people, and if it's worth pursuing them as much as it is actual other connections.
Great question. Okay, so remember, this is just my opinion. There's some people, there's no hard, fast, or hard rule. I'm not repped. I've had friends who are repped, and they were not able to get a job, whereas I was able to get a writing job unrepped, right? So, like what Tyler Perry said, you can do that all by yourself. Some people get a manager, doesn't mean that your career is going to automatically take off, or a rep. So the difference between the manager and the rep, and the agent rather, is that the manager deals with more of the development, getting you notes, helping you mold your stuff and getting out there. They could also submit to staffing jobs if you're going to do TV. They may know about writing assignments, whereas the agent is the one who can broker the deal, right? So like I don't have someone who reps me right now, but I have someone that I met that I really, really like, who's an agent who's repping a project of mine. Because I really like her. We're just not there yet, or maybe I don't feel like I have something on the table that I feel like, oh, it's worth her time. As far as like a major deal though, but I like her and I trust her. So, and she liked this particular project, so we agreed to do that. And she's starting to put a shit out to producers and things, and I really like her. But remember that whoever you end up working with, you're still going to have to book your own. So basically this needs to be like a marriage, 50-50. You're still going to be pursuing your own job. So nobody's going to fight for your career like you fight for your career. And they need to be bringing something to the table, because like I've had a friend too on a huge show. Manager, she got that through her own steam, becoming a staff writer. Manager didn't get her that job. And even if she's over her manager for not helping her, but even if she left the manager and went to someone else, as long as she has a contract with that job, she still has to pay the manager her 10%. So you don't want to get in a situation where you're stuck. So what I would say, and also know that a lawyer can, because I'm not repped, I didn't have an agent that brokered my deal. I had a lawyer. The good thing about the lawyer is that lawyers charge less, right? You get a lawyer that's doing, agents and managers do 10%. Lawyers do 5%. Now, a lawyer's not going to get you a job. An agent and manager could, but a lawyer's not going to do that. So if you're at the stage where, I would say if you meet somebody that really tickles your fancy, go for it. Do your research on that person. Speak to other writers who are under them, reach out to, hey, I'm meeting, I'd love to get your insight. Get the intel on them, because it kind of becomes like a marriage, which even though you're not signing anything, there's still an etiquette that's expected. So if it's not working out within 6 months, you would come back to the table and say, and they more than likely say, hey, can you give me another 6 months? So you gotta imagine, do you want to be stuck with this person for a year if it's not working? So you want to get some intel on the person. But unless you're really, really getting some traction, you have I wouldn't worry about that. They will come. I've had showrunners say, nobody wants you until somebody wants you, right? Build yourself up, and the managers will come. But do research on who are your ideal? Like, who would you love to get on the radar for? Because I'm big on manifestation. So do your research on if there's I found out that this, I said, I really like Found. And I started to do research on the writers, and I realized, well, hey, wait, I've crossed paths with 2 writers that are on the show. They have the same manager, and I've crossed paths with her. This is somebody I need to, now is on my radar, where she wasn't before because I wasn't looking. So do the research and have them as here's my ideal, but that won't stop you from getting a job. Like, trust me, you get something on the table, the reps will come. So you don't gotta worry about that. I would say go for the assignment. And then keep your eye out though for who you would like to work with. All right, and then Saeed, you had a question?
Yeah. First I want to say thank you again for this amazing session. So I have a couple of questions. First, I want to know your personal opinion about this. So I'm like, I have an account on Coverfly, and like I'm doing all this like screenwriting competitions and everything. Left and right, I hear that most of these competitions are a scam, and you shouldn't
Mm.
pay for them. You shouldn't. But like, I'm getting something out of it. So for me, it's like I feel good, but at the same time, I want to know your personal opinion. Like if I do this in the long term, because I have a couple of shorts on them. I'm planning to write my feature. I'm planning to put it there. I'm planning for like the recognition that happens in years. I want to know, what do you think about that? And the second question is that I'm working on my proposal for my second short film because I'm a filmmaker as well. I want to make my film. I want to submit it to festivals to, go ahead and get my recognition. So the thing is that I'm preparing my proposal. And is there any way that, I mean, like, do you have any service for me to reach to you to send you the proposal to get what you think? Because after that, I'm planning to pitch it to different peoples, in Iran and outside of Iran to finance it. Thank you.
Okay, great questions. So the first part with competitions, if I always say when you're going to pick a competition, whatever their prize is, well, first of all, if it's free, apply, right? So anything free, fellowships, competitions, apply because it doesn't hurt. Now, if it's a paid service, I would say only if it has something that would be a viable payoff for you. So you don't have, well, I would say with competition, you don't have to win to win, because if you make it to the finals level, the judges have read your stuff. And sometimes a judge, like we've had it where judges were like, hey, can you, I want to set up a meeting. And the person didn't win, but they just really liked the script and they went. So if it's a judge that you really wanted to connect with, if it comes with some sort of mentorship, if like with Coverfly, I saw there was a competition on there where they were giving $30,000 towards production of your short, and they were going to give you a guidance. That's something that would pique my interest. If the winner gets to fly out, they will fly you out, like Atlanta Film Festival will fly out the winner to the festival. Ken, I think, is doing that too. Monkey Paw had something with TIFF recently. NBC is always on there. Warner Brothers on there. You have the big ones like Big Break and Nickel, and there's some that have Page and all those big ones. And then like with Roadmap, our competitions, we always incorporate, because the big thing is about getting in front of the execs. So like the kids one now, Meg Laveau is part of, who wrote Inside Out and Inside Out 2 is part of the prize package. So it needs to be something where whatever's happening benefits you, and only you could decide what benefits you. Than that, and I always say apply to all the fellowships, like, because that comes with mentorship. Mentorship is everything. Mentorship really is, and building that network and connections is everything. The other question you had about the portfolio. Me personally, I wouldn't be the right person to send a portfolio to, because I don't.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I said a proposal. Proposal for short film.
Sorry, proposal.
Yeah.
Now, if it's thank you for the question. So if it's something like, is the proposal like based like a written pitch, or I just want to make sure we use the same language when we're saying proposal? Is your proposal a written pitch, or is it like a budget breakdown for an existing project? What is your proposal?
It's a whole thing. It starts with the log line, the treatment, the synopsis. It goes to the statement, biography, budget, everything, the whole package.
Okay, and then are you setting it up like a pitch deck, or how are you setting it up?
So there are like two different documents. First is a proposal. This is like 7 to 12 pages, and then like I'm planning to extract a pitch out of it too. Oh, and the mood book, the lookbook, the mood book of the short film, and I'm setting all this up because like I'm trying to finance it internationally, and I think the first step is to have like a kick-ass proposal to, make that connection.
Yeah. So
So
if
this
it
is why I'm yeah,
so
yeah.
if
Go
it's
ahead.
one of those things where you're looking to get like eyes on it, I mean, we have, like, if you look on Roadmap, we have execs that will give you, who are currently insider in the industry, who can give you notes on your pitch deck, your Bible, whatever it is, your thing, that they can meet with you and work with you on it. And I always say, if you're going to work with one of our execs, always look at their mandates just to make sure it aligns. Because a lot of people have gotten, deals being with the execs, or have gotten signed if you're looking for, if you're at the stage you're looking for representation. But that would be the avenue, because like me personally, I wouldn't be able to like help you develop your pitch
Oh,
deck,
okay.
but one of the execs probably could give you, who is actually doing development. Like I'm working with one of the execs right now, who I adore, who gives great notes to help me develop a project too. So they're really good. But yeah, it would probably be one of the execs on the site that would be able to help you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Rachel, is your hand still up, or you had another question? I think Rachel's hand's up.
Oh man, I keep doing that. I'm sorry.
That's
I'll
okay.
lower it. I forgot you have to lower the hand. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, Rachel. All right. Anybody else have any questions before we wrap up, before I release you for your Saturday? No? Okay. Well, first, thank you for having patience and allowing us to go over time. I know we went over by a half an hour, so I really appreciate your patience and your eagerness and your willingness to learn, because it was your questions that made it so interesting, and the engagement and those who participated. And again, there's different ways everybody participates in their own way. So I hope you did some of the writing exercises, even if you didn't feel comfortable talking. And again, if you think of any questions later, my email is there. Please make use of the site-wide code if you're interested. But again, I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Imagine this Women's International Film Festival even thinking of us and inviting Roadmap writers. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. And then I think